As House of the Dragon continues to enthrall fans with its political intrigues, many are fondly recalling some political developments from Game of Thrones. After all, manipulation, succession crises, and infighting between lords were a key part of the show that seems to have extended to its prequel. But one element that House of the Dragon is missing is a lord with the same terrifying presence as the oft-intimidating Tywin Lannister. The patriarch of his house, Tywin proved to be capable of anything and everything when his enemies challenged him. It's why fans love Tywin and why they made so many memes that sum him up perfectly. 10 fierce as a lion as the most powerful man in Game of Thrones at the time of his death, Tywin was utterly fearless. It didn't matter who went up against him, Tywin was always confident that he would come out on top. Even when Tyrion was waving a crossbow in his face, Tywin was happy to manipulate and insult him. It's a major part of Tywin's nature that made him so terrifying, but it was also why he failed to comprehend that others could be just as strong as him. His fierce nature became arrogance, which is how his dismissal of Tyrion ended with a bolt through his torso. It's also why it isn't unbelievable that he could stand up to Thanos and barely blink. 9 strong beliefs on ruling. While he was often happy to resort to brutality to get his way, Tywin also had firm and strong beliefs on how to rule a kingdom, let alone 7 of them. It was a trait he displayed each time he talked to his grandsons, as he expected utter perfection from them both. Happy to direct Joffrey to his room like a disgruntled child, and to direct Tommen about the wisdom of good kings, Tywin proved that he knew how to rule and was also happy to teach. So if faced with Palpatine, Tywin would be happy to offer his critique and insist that he perform as any Senate should. 8 relies on Cersei's marriages. Tywin was a man who attempted to resolve all his problems in one of 2 ways: marriage or murder. When one failed, his attention always shifted to the other. His turmoils with House Targaryen, he attempted to resolve with a wedding between Cersei and Rhaegar. His turmoils with House Baratheon were eased with a marriage pact between Cersei and Robert. Tywin even attempted to bond 2 of the best Game of Thrones houses, the Lannisters and the Tyrells, by trying to marry Cersei to Loras. So it doesn't exactly seem it was against Tywin's character to try to resolve the war with the White Walkers by offering Cersei to the Night King. After all, he hardly seemed to care for her wishes. 7 lost to his son for much of Game of Thrones, Tywin was on top of the world. Though he contributed to Joffrey's downfall, he was grandfather to 2 kings and father to a queen. He won several wars, exterminated several houses, and earned the title Hand of the King on 2 separate occasions. Yet by the end of the series, his own son killed him in his bathroom after finding him with a sex worker that Tywin despised. Proven to be a hypocrite and left for the realm to discover him dead on the toilet, Tywin lost in a fashion more embarrassing than any others in Game of Thrones. 6 of spiteful killer. While not the man who was able to take credit for much of the action during Robert's rebellion, Tywin was still a brutal killer who managed to earn the ire of the realm. Though he presented the image of a strong political figure who would not accept insults to his house, he was truly little more than a prideful man who was quick to lash out at his enemies for perceived slights. After all, Tywin not only ordered the murder of Rhaegar's son, but he also ordered the death of Rhaegar's daughter and wife, despite there being no political purpose. He also sacked King's Landing after, though it had already opened the gates for him. He even arranged the Red Wedding when the war was already over, just because he was too spiteful to let it go. 5 furious about Jaime. One major piece of Tywin's character was that he refused to accept the reality that Jaime was sworn to the Kingsguard. Though Jaime was far from being one of the greatest Kingsguard of all time, he had sworn not to hold any lands or titles, which meant that he could never inherit his father's seat Casterly Rock. So when Tommen proposed to remove Jaime from his place, it was the ultimate reward for the then-deceased Tywin. After all, after so many years of waiting for Jaime to renounce his place among the White Cloaks, it was all Tywin could have asked for. 4/10 pretended to care the Red Wedding was the official end of the war between the Starks and Lannisters, but that didn't mean the move was as benevolent as Tywin would later claim. Just as Cersei's destruction of the Tyrells was unnecessary and abhorrent, the Red Wedding was a brutal and needless display of cruelty. After all, though Tywin would argue fewer men died because Robb and his bannermen did, he still ordered thousands of deaths. By breaking the laws of guest right, Tywin proved that Lannisters and Freys could never be trusted, so his feigned display of care would only show the realm that a Lannister surrender could never be accepted. After the Red Wedding, who could trust anything a Lannister or Free said? 3/10 hated his son. There were few people in Westeros that Tywin hated as much as he did Tyrion. Despite being the man's father, Tywin viewed him as a disgrace to the house and often tried to keep him out of sight, out of mind, and in the line of fire. After all, that's why he sent him into battle with undisciplined clansmen. Though Tyrion was one of the smartest characters in the show, Tywin refused to see it and instead considered him the man who murdered Tywin's wife. It's why he swore that Tyrion would never rule Casterly Rock, despite Tyrion being next in line and highly deserving. In the end, it's why he died. 2/10 loved Arya despite despising his own son, having a low opinion of the other, and ignoring the wishes of his daughter. Tywin did manage to find a child that he had some sense of affection for. After all, Tywin saved Arya Stark in Harrenhal and even took her as his cupbearer. Though she often treated him with disrespect and was clearly a northern girl, Tywin never seemed to mind. In fact, he attempted to give her advice to help her survive. While the Arya scenes are unpopular because Tywin was behaving so strangely, it does make sense that he would interact more positively with those he did not have obscenely high expectations for. 1/10 highly respected. While Tywin was hardly a good man, he certainly earned the respect of those around him. Though widely hated in the north, most lords south of the Neck viewed him as a shrewd and effective hand who knew how to keep the small folk in line and warring lords at ease. Even the lords that Tywin faced off against tended to view him with the utmost respect, despite the fact that he and his family looked down on them. While Tywin was certainly an arrogant man, it was not unfounded. After all, the rest of Westeros viewed his accomplishments glowingly.